So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 95, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Aadil Kazmi, who's the CEO of Swyft. So Swyft is a B2B logistics marketplace that allows brands and retailers to offer same-day delivery. So it's backed by top venture funds like Forerunner Ventures, Shopify, Golden Ventures, and more. So this is a really great chat with Aadil, where we got to learn more about the founding story of Swyft, did a deep dive into it as a B2B and SaaS enabled marketplace, learn more about the recent growth, fundraising journey, and also had a really great Q&A for those in the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and now you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Aadil, welcome to the group chat. And I know you and I have actually met up in the past here locally, and chatted about Swyft some. But, really excited to have you join us here today with the groups. That way we can really dive into things more as a B2B and a SaaS-enabled marketplace. Before we really jump into things, though, I think it might be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more in your background, though, for those who don't know you, and then, what led you to starting Swyft?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Aadil, one of the founders here at Swyft. My background, never built a marketplace before. I was at Amazon, actually, on the ads team, and in late 2019, came across how when shoppers were presented a faster shipping option for certain product categories, cart conversions just went through the roof. And so that was an insightful moment for me, because the question that I eventually started asking myself was, if faster shipping has such a huge impact on cart conversion and therefore sales for e-commerce brands and retailers, then why isn't everyone offering faster shipping? And so that really was the founding story, I guess, of Swyft, that our mission is to bring fast and affordable e-commerce delivery to brands, retailers, and merchants alike. And so that's really what we've been up to for the last 2 years or so. Fast, affordable shipping and reliable shipping for e-commerce brands and retailers through a marketplace model.
That's really great. Thanks for sharing that kind of insight with us. So kind of going back to the very beginning, though, what were like the first steps that you took to start it as a marketplace?
Yeah, good question, Mike. For us, it was, we live in the world of atoms and bits, as many marketplaces do. And so for us, it was a question of, what is the easiest way to scale the supply side of our marketplace? And so we spent a lot of time up front thinking through our growth hypotheses and how we would actually build a marketplace. And so at the time, we really had we really had 3 paths that we could take. So path 1 was not of a marketplace, actually. It was, we can go and build a final mile carrier for fast shipping. So we could be the carrier. We could be the tech-enabled FedEx, if you will. And so that was path 1. Path 2 was, we could be a search and discoverability marketplace, in where we connect existing courier companies to merchants of all types. So think of like just a merchant logging on to a website and being able to see and view all of the local couriers in the city that they'd like to ship in. And then path 3, which is the path that we ended up taking, was we basically asked ourselves, is it enough just to connect the 2 sides of the marketplace and let them transact freely? Does that really achieve our mission and our goal of fast and affordable e-commerce delivery? And so path 3 was, how do we make the suppliers, the couriers themselves, more efficient, more profitable? Because if they're more profitable and they're more efficient, then arguably the marketplace itself will thrive, because there'll be lower prices being offered from suppliers to merchants, a higher quality of service, and all that. And so path 3 was, can we build infrastructure software first and foremost for the supplier, and then connect them to the merchants? And so that's the path that we took. It was definitely a harder and more strenuous path, and we're still obviously on that journey. But that's the path that we took. So path number 3, which is, let's go build infrastructure software first and foremost for these couriers and then connect them via marketplace to merchants looking for fast and affordable delivery.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks for kind of walking us through the different options. So I'd love to learn, go back and learn a little bit more about when you kind of like mapped out those three different options, right, that you could take kind of earlier on. What were some like the nuanced kind of like decision making factors that came into play when you chose to go down the path three, and which we'll kind of get into a bit more, and maybe some, like how did you just like kind of think through that and just ultimately make that decision and kind of like commit to going down that route?
Mm-hmm. So a few factors that were part of our decision-making process. Well, the first and foremost was what path achieves our mission of fast and affordable delivery. The second was scanning what's been done before as well. So what's worked for others in other industries. It didn't need to be logistics, of course. And one of a business model that I adore deeply is the MindBody business model. So MindBody is your classic example of a SaaS-enabled marketplace, wherein they've built something pretty special for small and medium-sized businesses, and then obviously layered on top with the marketplace component, which is search and discoverability. So frankly, we tried to understand what are the nuances of our industry, so logistics specifically. Second, what has worked in the past in this industry, what hasn't worked in the past in this industry. Third was trying to understand successful business models in SaaS-enabled marketplaces in adjacent industries, again, like MindBody. And then the fourth was what actually achieves our mission, and again, our mission being fast and affordable e-commerce delivery. So that was a decision-making framework for selecting between the three paths. And now once we'd selected path number three, the question became, which do we go solve first? Do we build the marketplace, or do we build the tooling first? And Mike, I mean, you have a pretty awesome post on LinkedIn about that one of the easiest ways to kickstart a marketplace growth is to go build the tooling, because you have, in many ways, an immediate value proposition to one side of the marketplace when you may not have liquidity. And so that's what we did. We spent the first half of our journey building the tooling, really understanding who the suppliers are, what their pain points were. And we were in many ways a software provider and not a marketplace at the beginning to these suppliers. And once we had found a certain amount of density with our supply locally in the first city that we launched, which is Toronto up in Canada, and we figured out that the tooling that we had built for these small number of suppliers can then be applied to a larger number of suppliers across the country and across North America, is only then when we started to build out the marketplace component.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to get into the go-to-market and expansion here in a little bit. Before we do though, I thought it might also be helpful if you can kind of give us like a high-level overview though of maybe Swyft as a marketplace, and you can touch on some of the unique aspects of it.
For sure. So Swyft is a B2B marketplace. What we do is we enable fast and affordable e-commerce delivery for merchants of all types. What differentiates us is really two things. One is, as I mentioned before, we do enable our couriers, who are supply side, with better technology that allows them to either be more profitable when delivering volume for our marketplace, or automate some of their existing and manual workflows, which again leads them to higher productivity and higher efficiency. All good things that couriers are looking for. We're different than other business models in our space in that we're not just search and discoverability. We are more of a managed and a hands-on approach. So we actually arbitrage the rates between the marketplace. And so what that means is our value propositions, the supply side, start with, we will equip you with better technology. We will prove to you that our technology will enable you to either do more or do more profitably. And then what we do is we actually purchase rates directly from our supply side and arbitrage that back to the demand side. And the reason we took that managed approach is Might be a nuance in the world in our industry and logistics, but this really solved our merchants' problems best. In that merchants are looking for consistency, reliability, and a single price point that they can scale across the country. And so that's really what Swyft provides the merchants and couriers.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for giving us a kind of overview on that. So you did, mention that you did start with building the tooling for them, right? So and then now we got into as far as talking about the arbitraging the price. So at what point did you start doing that? Was that from the very beginning, or is that like a more recent thing that you've done?
So we've always arbitraged the price. When we first started, we weren't, and we quickly realized that in letting it be a fully unmanaged marketplace, we actually weren't able to meet the needs of our merchants. And so that's what actually forced us to rethink our relationship. Where does Swyft sit in this marketplace? Are we just the market maker, or are we the ones who hold additional responsibility in the form of arbitraging that rate itself? And that was interesting, Mike, because it forced us to really think about how this marketplace works, what the tooling does for the couriers. Are we just building it for the sake of building it, or are we building it, solving a real need, and then driving down the cost of servicing, the cost of service for the supplier? And so I'm happy to say that since we had that realization, the reason why we have been successful in being able to arbitrage that rate is because the tooling that we built for the couriers themselves has enabled the couriers to do more and do more profitably.
Yeah, that sounds like creates quite the kind of stickiness on the supply side too with the couriers. So on the couriers, like what type of business is that? Is that like a small kind of operation as far I'm assuming it's not peer to peer, right? Is it like a professionalized size or?
That's right, Mike. So what we, and again, early on, we were experimenting with all types of couriers, all sizes. And what we realized is that our sweet spot is really the mid-market of the couriers out there. So these are not peer-to-peer gig networks, if you will, but they're also not large regional carriers that many of us are well known and familiar with. These are mom and pop businesses doing somewhere north of $2 to $3 million a year in revenue. These are SMBs looking to scale their business, looking for better technology, and looking for ways to grow their business. And so the combined value proposition of SaaS and a marketplace really resonated with these SMB courier companies.
Yeah, certainly sounds compelling, from there. And so how are you reaching them?
A lot of the initial outreach was actually through analog courier networks. So we did a lot of fact finding through very analog means. And we still do. You'd be surprised to know that the long tail of couriers, they, especially in our industry and logistics, they form their groups. They've got courier boards, they've got communities. And so we really did a lot of grassroots marketing, if you will. We penetrated the communities, we became involved in the communities. And so not only was it a great way to learn about the supply side, but it's to date been an amazing acquisition funnel.
Yeah, I think I saw a few kind of nods here, so I think we can all relate with the direct sales and marketing within some of the communities and whatnot on the supply side. So then if we kind of jump over to the demand side, like what types of retailers is Swyft for?
Yeah, great question. I think it definitely took us some time to figure out our ICP on the demand side. Again, because the marketplace can only service what the suppliers are able to. And so step one, when we selected, hey, Swyft is best for X type of supplier, well, then automatically we limited our marketplace's services to X type of service. And so now Swyft is ideal for direct to consumer and retail brands who ship across many locations, who are shipping non-perishables, high-value goods, where customer experience is where you make it or you break it. So examples of this would be general merchandise, where I always think of this way, Mike. If I've got to purchase, Crest toothpaste, I can get it from a variety of different places. It's the same toothpaste, it's the same pricing. So then, as a customer, as a shopper, what am I basing my decision on? And delivery speed and quality of delivery service is really high up there. And so those are the types of merchants that we work best for.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing with us on that. So how many markets do you operate in?
So right now we are in 5 markets. We're expanding into 3 more this year, all across the country. So that's going to be exciting. And then our goal is really to cover and aim to cover 30% of the US population by end of this year.
Oh, wow. So I would say, so what are some of the biggest challenges that you see kind of in the way in order to get there?
Yeah, I think the number one challenge is definitely liquidity. And because we are in the business of arbitraging that rate, as you can very quickly imagine, there are certain things that need to be true for each market to operate profitably. And so the first few market launches were not the easiest to do. There was a lot of guessing and making decisions on without having data. But now that we've gone ahead and launched 5 markets, we feel a lot more confident in with our in-city unit economics. So we've really determined and figured out that at X density, we can expect Y margin, which then allows us to further invest in growth within that city. So that's definitely one a learning lesson that we've been able to really get a grasp on over the last 5 markets. But the other nuances, maybe specific to our industry, is that each city is different. Each city behaves differently, and so while there are similarities in our playbook, we do look at each city launch differently. Good example of that is New York versus LA. LA is a very sparse city, whereas New York is highly dense. And so the way that suppliers work, the way that the unit economics look in New York versus LA are very much so different.
Yeah, that's great. I was actually going to ask about that. How some of the markets might kind of differ. On that level. So, so on that note too, what is your kind of like team like, and kind of like the org structure?
Yeah, so we really have, we staff obviously an engineering team, a marketplace team, an operations team, and then a direct sales team. So those are really the 4 pillars of at Swyft. And the way that it works is engineering at Swyft does 2 things primarily. One is continuously builds tooling features in the tooling, so that we grow our value proposition to suppliers, but also think of our engineering team and our product teams as marketplace operations, where we're continuously also automating how the marketplace works, and then how both demand and supply interact within the marketplace. One big learning lesson for our team was that a lot of the growth tactics that I think exist in B2C marketplaces weren't necessarily applicable to ours. And so that actually was a very big learning lesson, in that the acquisition channels, definitely on the demand side, are very much so an enterprise sales process. So direct sales, long sales cycles, and on the supply side, it also is another direct sales motion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing on that note. I was going to ask about that as far as the direct sales kind of process and whatnot. So going a little bit deeper on that, so when you open a new market, I'm assuming, is it sales led at first, or?
Yes, so it definitely is sales led. One interesting mechanism in our marketplace is that because we chose to focus on and enable enterprise merchants, what we found is that existing merchants are taking us to new cities. So once we've proven out with a customer that we can work for you reliably and enable all the good things that we say we can, it is actually existing customers who are taking us in net new cities, which is also accelerating growth and faster growth in every subsequent city that we launch.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So cool. So we actually have some kind of questions, it looks like, coming in here. But, I did want to ask before we jump into the questions here, so you have some pretty incredible investors. And, I'd love to learn a little bit more about, what the fundraising journey has been like.
Yeah. So our fundraising journey was, we raised a seed round in July of 2020. We then followed on with a Series A in March of 2021. And I think that, e-commerce, as we all know, has grown leaps and bounds over the last 2 years. And there's been a larger focus on e-commerce enablement and infrastructure. And that's really where Swyft sits. What's unique to our model, being a B2B marketplace, is that we can scale much faster than our asset-based peers, in that we can launch markets faster. There are definitely different nuances in our business model, but we can really meet the needs of our enterprise merchants a lot faster than other business models can.
Yeah, so I was actually going to kind of come back to that and ask about, the kind of competitive landscape, right? And, what it's like, and then kind of how you view that. But I guess this would be a good time since you kind of brought it up.
Yeah. It's a really interesting question, because early on we were weighing the pros and cons of just this. Being the direct, I guess in our world, being the carrier itself versus a marketplace, there were definitely a set of pros, which were, because we own everything and we're vertically integrated, we have more control, and control almost always equals better reliability. Two, being a carrier, not only do you have more control, but you arguably have better cost structures in the long run. And whereas being a marketplace, what you're really solving for first and foremost is scalability and growth. You can get to market faster. And so what worked in our favor, Mike, was that when we looked at what did these group of merchants want most, it ended up being the ability to scale fast. It ended up being the ability to scale fast, the ability to create redundancy in your shipping network. And that's really the two problems that our approach has solved, is solving, and continues to solve.
That's great. Let's get into some questions. Otherwise, I'll just keep kind of going back and forth on some of the nuances. Let's see, Davey, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Super interesting. So I have a question regarding the expansion. So maybe I didn't understand correctly. So I just want to rephrase it and maybe have your insight regarding it. So you say you're working mostly with pops and moms businesses in terms of career, that you're mostly developing within the cities. So my question is regarding your expansion. Do you already see a limit, or how do you think you're going to overcome the limit of expanding your business? Because I'm based in Europe, but I guess in the US, the states, they're quite big. So there's already a lot of cities that you will not be able to reach because they're just not supplier at all. It's maybe too far. How are you going to expand your business and dealing with this, knowing that you probably won't have the supply that will have all the floats to go and deliver whatever product to the end customer that will be like a bit too far from where they're based?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Thank you for asking. When we started out with a set of beliefs. So beliefs very much so does bets. One of the bets that we made was that over the next few years, e-commerce fulfillment will move closer to major US cities. And so we just needed to have faith in that belief. The belief, again, being that e-commerce fulfillment will move closer to where people live. And in the US, most people live in very large metros, the top 10 US metros account for about 70% of the entire population. Don't quote me on that, just as a rough estimate in back of paper, back of napkin math. So with that belief system, we basically said, if this is going to happen, then the need for final mile, faster shipping services like Swyft will also increase if that happens. And so to answer your question directly, one, that was the first thing. We just needed to have that belief. And that belief did come true. Over the last 2 years, we've seen enormous e-commerce fulfillment companies grow leaps and bounds with the mission of bringing fulfillment closer to where people live. And then the second was how big is that market, or how big can that market get? And so when we looked at that TAM of, hey, if Swyft can only ever service the 70% of consumers who live in the top 10, 12, 13 major metros, is that a $1 billion market, or is that a $50 billion market? And if it's a $50 billion market, then this is still an opportunity worth pursuing. And we can leave the rest of the opportunity to someone else who is building specific capabilities to attack that segment of the market. So that was our decision-making process back when we started. Knock on wood, I'm happy to say that both parts of our thesis have come true over the last several years. And the market potential, we've just scratched just the tip of it.
Thank you very much. Super.
Awesome. That was great. And you actually answered the question that Nishant had. He was asking how you initially kind of came up with the market sizing and opportunity for the SMBs and couriers. So that's super helpful. Hey, Nishant, did you want to jump on and did that help answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit, but would love if you could sort of dig into that a little bit. My perspective there was, when you are starting out, obviously the time for delivery is pretty big, but the supply constraint is a question that comes up sometimes. It's like, how are you going to get the supply side sort of organized, and how big is that? Because they sort of determine your experience, right? So that was sort of the intention of the question. Could you talk a little bit about that, on if you faced any challenges there? How do you convince investors about this opportunity there? Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So when we started out, a lot of our belief system was based on our collective experiences at Amazon and other logistics focused companies. So there was definitely, you could say, that unfair advantage of us coming from the industry and us having let's say insider insights, if you will, around what, how do we make sense of this mess? You asked another great question, which is, what happens if Swyft is doing $1 billion in transactions on a monthly basis, which, where is the bottleneck? Is it on demand? Is it on supply? And then what do we do from there? We gave that question a lot of thought very early on in our business. And what we said is we needed a wedge into the market, the wedge being, let's go work with SMBs. We can solve a problem for them almost immediately through both software and being their sales and marketing arm. But as our business grows and evolves, we're already preparing for creating value propositions that allow us to then target and work with suppliers of a larger size. And I can share with you folks that that's actually what is happening right now, in that we are coming to market with additional value proposition and additional features in our product that then allow us to work with larger suppliers who have more capacity and who have more not only capacity but ability to service larger geographic areas, larger customers, and more reliably.
Awesome. Hey, Anthony, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, hi, thanks, and thanks Aadil for talking to us. It's been really interesting. So I run a company called Stashbeam. We're a marketplace for storage space, so be that domestic, business, or parking, and we bring together all types of supply. So whether that's Mr. Goggins with a garage, or someone with a warehouse, or indeed we have lots of shipping container and self-storage facilities who use our platform to generate demand. I'm kind of going to take advantage here. It's kind of two questions, but I'll let you decide if you tackle them both. One of them was I was curious to know what the biggest supply side misbehavior is that you see, and how do you manage that? So, for us, for example, it's someone turns up to a parking spot and there's a car parked there, right? But I'm interested in how what the biggest pain is for you to get your supply to do what you want it to do, and how you manage that. And then my second question was a very simple one on marketplace health and metrics, and if there's one major metric which you track to know whether your marketplace is moving in the right direction, so you can measure health.
Mm-hmm. Great questions. Supply reliability is something I think we're always going to be working through. I think, as I mentioned earlier, when you do own everything, you automatically get control. And when you are a marketplace by nature, you need to build in that layer of complexity, that layer of error. So two ways that we solved it, and obviously we're continuing to optimize our methods of solving for reliability. One is giving the demand side a guarantee. And this is a tactic that many B2B marketplaces have approached or use as a solution to this problem. So in the world of Swyft, because our marketplace enables delivery services, and in delivery, you have something called an SLA, or service level agreement. So when you work with a merchant, you're effectively promising them that hey, we will get this package delivered by this time. And so in our marketplace, the first layer of protection for merchants is we take on that delivery back guarantee. So we will credit back in full the cost of that delivery service to the merchant should that delivery not meet its SLA. And so that's created a layer of protection, if you will, for the demand side. Now, the second problem we needed to go solve was disincentivizing bad behaviors on the marketplace. And we tested a variety of things. We tested a rating system. We tested, knockoff on price, your ability to not participate in the marketplace anymore. What we found to be the most successful is actually tiering access. And it's counterintuitive, but when we change the psychology of how suppliers work within the marketplace, it actually forced suppliers to do better. And so what I mean by a tiered system is when a new supplier comes and joins the network, they actually cannot grow limitlessly. There are tiers that they need to pass, and each tier that they pass is based on a set of operational metrics. And we rigorously track those metrics. And an advantage that we have that maybe others don't is because we built the fleet management tooling for these couriers that they all use, we have these live data feeds back to us where we can basically figure out with a high level of certainty how these couriers are performing operationally, and more importantly, not only what happened, but where in the process did it break? Was it the pickup? Was it during delivery? Was it route optimization? There's so many factors that go into making this happen, because we're an atoms and bits business, that because our technology is installed with these couriers, we can not only figure out how are you doing, but we can also help you pinpoint where in the process are you going wrong. And our goal isn't to punish our suppliers. Our goal is to help them do better. And that's really why we set up an entire marketplace operations team, which is, can we turn around the bad actors and get them to be amazing suppliers? And then in terms of, I think you asked for what is that one metric that we look for? Obviously our North Star is GMV, but one metric that we look for is net retention. Net retention is so important in our world because of the inherent network effects built into our marketplace, wherein, as I mentioned earlier, that when we launch a enterprise merchant, our goal is, can we grow with this enterprise merchant? And so net retention and looking at those cohorts is a good signal to us around, how happy is the marketplace and how healthy is it?
Super helpful. Thanks, man. And actually, a lot of overlap with what we've done over here in terms of, focusing on operations and retention and stuff like that. So reassuring parallels.
Those are the great marketplace questions. So cool. Hey, Richard, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, love to. Thanks a lot, Mike. And pleasure to meet you, Aadil, and congratulations on your success with Swyft. I'm very passionate about shipping, logistics, marketplaces. I'm founder, CEO of Citizen Shipper. We connect drivers with people who want to move pets and precious items all around the country. And we got a strong focus on long distance transport. Super fascinated by everything you're doing. I wonder if you could go a little bit more into how you recruit the drivers, a little bit about what screening you perform, and then say a few words about your business model.
Sure. So we don't work with drivers directly. We work with the courier companies who then employ the drivers. And what we do on the supply side is our number one acquisition funnel continues to remain grassroots and community-based marketing, or direct sales, if you will. So we're pretty plugged into these courier communities, both online and offline. A lot of trade shows, a lot of he knows him, she knows her, word of mouth and grassroots marketing. Another area that we're looking to get to, we just haven't hit that scale yet, but eventually when we hit that scale, is to really productizing the growth on the supply side. And what I mean by that is that that's actually one inherent advantage of being a SaaS-enabled marketplace, that you can use your product to be an acquisition channel for your marketplace. So while Swyft isn't at that stage yet, it is something that we're working on. And so it's actually a huge goal of ours this year, which is to transition to more of a product-led growth engine on the supply side, wherein can we take the tooling that we've already built, can we productize it into a SaaS and then just put it out into the market? And so then when we think about conversion of that funnel, at the top of the funnel, we have demand generation and marketing activities, which then convert suppliers to using the product, SaaS, which then convert the suppliers then to join the marketplace. So I hope that provides some context into how we have been acquiring suppliers and then how we intend to acquire suppliers. Yeah,
that's very enlightening. Thank you very much. And then are you guys screening as well?
Right. Yes. So we do have a set of operational checklists, if you will, that we do. But what's really exciting about the way that we've built the marketplace, and especially the growth, is because these couriers must use our stack to power their business, we automatically get a feed of how well they're doing. And so the product is actually the best screening method itself. So the product screens out and in who we want to work with.
So you don't do sort of ID verification or background checks, anything like that?
Well, that definitely happens during the onboarding process. But prior to the onboarding process, our product will easily tell us these are the couriers that we should reach out to, or these are the couriers that we definitely do not want to work with because they just aren't meeting these set of operational metrics. Once we have highlighted a courier as we want to be able to work with you, we do have an entire checklist, includes ID verification, business verification, all those good things.
Good. And my last question related to your business model.
So we do arbitrage the rate. So we don't have a fixed take rate, if you will. We don't charge a flat or a fixed 10, 15, 20% off the service itself. Each market behaves as an independent P&L. And so we are arbitraging the rate. A good example would be Uber. Uber arbitrages the rate as well. So that's how our business model works.
Got it. Is that hard for you to build out projections?
Not exactly, because in our business, everything starts and ends with density. So as long as I was mentioning early on, it was definitely hard. I mean, any forecast we put out there just wouldn't be accurate. We had no historical data. After having launched a few marketplaces, cities, we have a lot more confidence in that achieving X density equals Y percentage in take rate. And then obviously you just work your P&L from there.
Good. Well, I appreciate your responses and wish you guys all the success.
Thanks, Richard.
Awesome. Yeah, that was actually, kind of my question, kind of going back earlier on, asking about, at what stage you arbitrage the pricing. Just for a little bit of context, we have a lot of founders here in the community that are chatting through, how they potentially do that, but also too, like managing that at such an early stage, with a limited kind of team and resources across maybe a few kind of markets. So
yeah, it was tough because early on, your P&L just looks like a mess because one, you're not at scale in any city, so it's up and down every single day. But so if the question is how did we, I guess, figure that pricing component out, we started with what is the market paying today? Like, let's just remove Swyft from the equation. What if a merchant interacted directly with a courier, what would that price point be? So let's call it $10. If a merchant goes to a courier directly, that the merchant is paying the courier $10 for delivering a package the same day. Then we started from, okay, where are we adding value? Where are we creating value? And really there were two options there. Either we can increase the cost of the service, so we can say, the base rate of the service is $10 and we can add $1 in the form of a fixed take rate. But that wasn't consistent with our mission of bringing fast and affordable delivery to the market. So then we looked at it from a different angle, and we said, what are we doing? So we're building this software for these couriers. What does the software do? And can we quantify, can we attach a dollar amount to that efficiency gain? And so we did. We guesstimated, once a courier uses our software stack to automate their workflows, have access to better route optimization tooling, et cetera, they can maybe shed $1.50 of cost. Well, if they can shed $1.50 of cost, then that becomes my margin. And then the question became, how much of that $1.50 of extra value do I want to retain versus giving it back to the courier? And so that's really how we began with our arbitraging pricing model. Obviously, along the way, we made tweaks and further optimizations, and we continue to do so. But it's worked well for us up to date. So our most mature markets are healthy, unit positive. Obviously, net new markets are not, but that was our journey in figuring out what that arbitraging model should look like.
Yeah, that's great. That might be a little highlight clip for pricing here. Awesome. Hey, we're gonna get a few more kind of questions here. Looks like we have a few hands come up. Zach, do you want to jump on?
Yeah. Thank you for the time today. Appreciate it very much, and it's good to meet you. So I appreciate the feedback so far. My question really relates to your experience around building out your team. And I really like the idea of what you said before about you're building out a SaaS product, and that's kind of the focus that you're taking the business kind of from this point forward. And so would just be interested to kind of see what your strategy is in terms of building out the team for that initiative. Really, because we're in a similar position where we're building a SaaS product for the supply side of our marketplace, and so just curious as to how you're going to plan to build out that team, or how you originally built out the team from kind of the startup, and what the focus is there. One thing that I've taken from different CTOs that I've spoken with is kind of taking down a top-down approach when developing everything out, and then leaving kind of we're both in the logistics space and routing and all that kind of stuff, and leaving that piece as the last piece to kind of tackle. Just curious as your feedback or thoughts of how you approach that.
Yeah, great question. Starting out, everyone has a small team, limited resources. Even after you've raised money, the resource constraints are always going to exist, and resource constraints, in my opinion, are a great thing. The three things that we did in building out team was, number one, focus on the most important problems. So even when building out the SaaS tooling, early on, we used a lot of third-party software that we stitched together. And our goal was, let's go select the most valuable components of this problem and build that internally. And so that allowed us to get to market faster with a small team size. And as time progressed and the business evolved and the business scaled, what we really did is ruthlessly prioritize what are the problems worth solving ourselves versus outsourcing, the classic build versus buy decision-making framework. And that allowed us to keep the team focused, hyper-focused around the needs of the business, but most importantly, hiring people who attack the problems that we want to keep internal and in-house versus leveraging someone else for. I think being a SaaS-enabled marketplace, the nature of your team evolves naturally. And it all depends on, I guess, which problem you're looking to tackle first. Are you looking to build a SaaS first? Are you looking to build a marketplace first? Because those tactics are so different, not only from a go-to-market perspective, but even from an engineering perspective. If you're going to go for the SaaS-enabled SaaS, if you're going to go the route of let's go build a SaaS first, you probably want to staff product engineers who have a lot of experience in building consumer-facing or user-facing products. And if you're going the marketplace route, then you're probably looking for a different type of engineering team, and so on and so forth. So for us, again, when we thought about team, what we really laid out was this plan, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we hired accordingly across those phases. And what allowed us, I guess, to get to market faster is when we started in each of these phases, we identified what are the parts of this problem that we just, we think are commoditized and we're happy buying versus building internally. And so that allowed us to do more with less people.
Yeah, that makes total sense. One follow-up question to that, it's like, from your perspective, as you lead that whole charge and kind of probably in tandem with your CTO or your lead engineer at this point, are you looking at it? I mean, if you have a marketplace and then you have kind of a SaaS enabled for, looks like the supply side here, are you looking at it as two separate entities? I mean, I know that it's kind of intertwined within your marketplace. It's kind of similar to what we're looking at, is like, okay, here's our marketplace. Here's a SaaS-enabled tool for our supply side. It's almost like they're two separate businesses, but they're really not. I mean, how do you view that? Are you looking at it as two separate businesses? I mean, it needs its own dev team, and or are you looking at it as part of the marketplace dev team? Because like you said, there are two different skill sets of developers for both.
I think the question that needs to be asked first is, what is the purpose of that SaaS? Is it a product that's intended to solve a go-to-market problem? Is it a product that's intended to solve a profitability problem? Do you see this product itself having its own P&L in the future? So I think, well, I guess first of all, it isn't a black or white question to answer. I think there's many, many shades of gray in between. For us, we view it as we are a marketplace with a component of SaaS, and the purpose of the SaaS is to accelerate acquisition. It's an acquisition funnel. It will probably for a very long time not have its own P&L. And so our teams are structured exactly like that as well. While we do have, specific engineers dedicated to building out feature sets within the product, and other engineers dedicated to automating the marketplace workflows and all that, it is all one team, because we look at the product as a feature set within the grander marketplace versus the product as a standalone P&L having and needing its own dedicated resources.
Got it. That's interesting. That's your viewpoint on it. Yeah, I'd be curious to pick your brains on it more.
I'll let you know in 5 years how it goes.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Zach, did you just want to give them kind of like a brief kind of, your one-liner for what you're building? Might be a helpful context.
Sure. Yeah, maybe that gives a little context. Yeah, we're basically a waste collection marketplace. We have customers who sign up for weekly trash pickup, and then we have independent contractors or private-owned haulers that basically would pick up all the trash. So the SaaS component that we're building is to solve the cold start problem, also to provide a resource for customer acquisition, right? For the SaaS base, for the private haulers to basically put all their customers on, right? And so anyway, that's the scope of it.
Yeah, I'd love to jam and be helpful anywhere I can.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Aadil, you were asking previously, before we started recording about, some marketplaces in the community, and it's definitely one of the things when we have a SaaS-enabled marketplace founder come on, it's quite the interest here in the community, as many are, looking to kind of launch some SaaS tooling for their marketplace. So, yeah. Well, cool. So we're almost out of time here. So, this is a really great chat. So, thanks for taking the time to join us here today. This is really fun to learn more about what you're building with Swyft. Before we kind of wrap things up, though, I did have one question for you, though, and that was, if you were to go back right before you started Swyft, what would you tell yourself about marketplaces?
They're a lot harder to start than you think they are. And I would say that to myself, I would give the advice of really pick fewer problems to go solve, because marketplaces by nature can get really, really, really complex very quickly. Solve big problems, but solve them with extreme precision and focus.
Yeah, it's a great kind of last tip to leave us with here. So awesome. And then last but not least, time for kind of a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. You can follow me or you can add me on LinkedIn. It's just my first and my last name, Aadil Kazmi.
Great. I'll include a link in the details of this or description. So you have a lot of new marketplace founder followers. So
cool. Awesome. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time to join us here today. This is a really, really fun chat, and we kind of dove into some things. So, and thanks everyone for the great questions.